there's times where something comes out of your mouth and you think, ah, that made it worse. Or I don't know if that's right. Or if you're second guessing your parenting, wondering if what you're saying is landing for them, is actually making a difference, is actually helping them learn from their mistakes, is actually helping them to not hit you or to not have rude child behavior. This is definitely the place to be. So I'm really excited to share with you things to say and not say to eliminate those stubborn child issues. So if you've got a kid who's like 6, going on 16, maybe who says no much more than they say yes, and maybe they question the vast majority of what you ask, or it feels like they question everything you ask them to do, you may be stuck in a defiant child cycle that's often no fun for anyone. The first thing that I want to do is to help you with some important stubborn child reminders. Now, you may be aware of these, but often when we're tired, when we've had a stressful week, we're going to forget them. So it helps all of us moms to be reminded time and time again about some of these strong-willed child special things about them, special things that make them tick. So the first one is this: often they are sensitive kids in disguise. So why is this important? It's because sometimes what they'll start to do is when they get overwhelmed, when they get overstimulated, they might start to armor themselves. And when they armor themselves, they just might not want to listen to you. So things you're trying to say just can't land. Also, many of them struggle with ADHD. So if this is the case and they're so focused on something else, our words can just fall on deaf ears because they are so focused on something else, or they're running around in circles around everyone and they just can't take it in. Often the parents I work with, some clients I work with, the first thing I'll talk about is one of the tools I use is to choose to go mute. We talk so much, but sometimes we're not talking when they can actually hear it, and we're wasting our words. So I'm thinking about somebody I'm working with right now. There are 2 preschool teachers that I've been helping with one of their children in their classroom, and he's been hitting a lot, and they're so lovely and they're so well-meaning, and they use their words all the time. Very encouraging, positive words like, "Hey, what a great picture. I love that picture." Or, "Oh, you kept your hands to yourself. Like, that was wonderful. You kept your hands to yourself." So all of those things can be useful. But if you have a kid who's already vibrating at a high level of like, zzz, it can be too much. So sometimes it's just better to just be quieter and not say so much. The second strong-willed child reminder I want you to be aware of is that we all have our own preferred love language and learning style. And this is especially true for stubborn children, for more spirited kids. So the more you know their style, the more you know their love language. And if you don't know it, by all means, please go and search it. So in this case, with the preschool teachers I was working with, we figured out that this little boy, the thing that made him feel most love was physical touch, which that makes sense. It's like a kinesthetic learner. And he was also hitting and touching so much and having a hard time keeping his hands to himself. He loves physical touch. So we actually talked about, instead of saying, "Oh, I love what you did with those blocks. Wow, what a tall tower you made," to instead go over, look, and just put your hand on their shoulder. Just give them a little squeeze. Those things can mean so much to somebody whose love language is physical touch, who gets filled up that way. The third reminder is that a stubborn kid's MO, their modus operandi, is often to be in control. Thus, if your words come across as controlling, it will often hit them, it'll hit their counter will, which is this automatic reflex to just say no without even thinking. So this brings me to what I want you to say more of and what I don't want you to say. So this comes straight out of my step 6 on my Peaceful Parenting Path program, which is self-esteem motivators. So when you do talk with your child, I want you to focus on the process, not the end result. So for instance, in the case with, I talked about the coloring, like, "Wow, that's such a great picture. I love that picture." Instead, if you're focusing more on the journey of it, not the destination, the process, you could be like, "Wow, I really notice how you used blue and you shaded it up here a little bit different. Huh, that's interesting." But it's staying away, and this is my second kind of tip for you today. It's staying away from pure judgment. This is good, this is bad, this is great, this is awesome. And why is that so important? Because if there is a drawing your child has made, a Play-Doh figurine that they have created, and you say, that is amazing, I love that, they all of a sudden have this bar to reach. There's a standard there. And if they do another Play-Doh figurine and they look at it and they're like, it's not as good, right away they can throw it out and say, I'm not going to try anymore. And often we focus on like the good and bad, and we feed, which really feeds future people pleaser tendencies, because then they're constantly looking for that external validation. Oh, is that going to be seen as good? Oh, is that going to be seen as bad? That's when they can start getting into a cycle of lying, a cycle of hiding things, a cycle of pretending that they're better at something than they are. Does this make sense? So instead of judgment, third thing I have for you today is I want you to focus on what you can see instead of the judgment, and ask them about their inner process. So let's say you're watching your child in a sports game. You could say, hey, you looked like you were really hustling out there. How did it feel? Instead of you putting your judgment, maybe they're hustling out there and they hate it. They're hurting. They're, I don't know, they notice they have a sore throat and they're not feeling great, but you're like, yes, way to go. You're hustling. Fantastic. Sometimes it can just be over the top. And instead, which I feel is a lot more respectful, and it's helping to get them to think about and develop some of this critical thinking, is ask them, how did it feel out there? Gosh, your picture, what do you like about it? What made you decide to go with yellow on this side here? That's interesting. Tell me about that. So it's eliciting their dialogue. Usually when we go right into praise, good, bad kind of praise, it's like end. There's no room for discussion. It's like, that's the best picture. Final, period. Typically, we as moms talk way too much. And simply, like I shared before, putting a hand on your child's shoulder, giving them a wink, taking them by hand can often mean so much more. And the last thing I want to leave you with is asking them more questions than telling. So it'd be like, gosh, what do you think about your picture today? What do you like about it? How did you feel while you were creating that picture? All of these kind of questions, the better questions we ask, the better we're preparing our children to evaluate, but to evaluate not from a validation perspective of having to be good, but from what is meaningful to them. I'm so glad you joined me today. I'm curious, where are you at on this discussion? Do you know what to say? Do you find sometimes things come out of your mouth, you say things and you're like, that didn't land too well? Do you know your child's learning style, what their love language is? If you don't, I recommend you get there. And if you like this video, I would really appreciate if you gave me a thumbs up. And I have got some really exciting monthly, if you like this and you want more parenting training, I've got some great monthly parenting masterclasses that I'm doing, and I'd love to have you join us. The next one we're doing is on sibling rivalry, competition, and the stubborn child. This is such an important one to get, especially if you have more than one child in the house who are at each other, or you worry about their self-esteem, one's pulling down the other, or if you have a kid who's highly competitive and doesn't ever like to lose. I'm so glad you're here. And if you haven't been reminded lately, thank you for all you do day in, day out as a parent. It is definitely not a sprint, but a marathon. And yeah, on behalf of your family, I thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.